This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment. Welcome back to another episode of Weights and Wealth. This episode's topic is around the smartphone and its impact on the 5Fs. Now, it's a piece of technology that can be used for both good and bad. So it can be used to enhance or detract from your life. And this week's shout out actually goes to my girlfriend, Lizzie, who has been telling a lot of her friends about my podcast. And one of the best ways to spread is through word of mouth.
Yeah, so if you want to keep supporting Weights and Wealth, we really appreciate when you share through word of mouth. It helps us grow. So Our monthly raffle winner for June, we're a little late here because we record in chunks and we forgot for the KGB Freedom episode on July 3rd to throw it in there. But our June raffle winner for the Starbucks gift card is Pat from Chicago, Illinois. He posted on Instagram a story tagging Weights and Wealth, and he was reading the book club. So he was reading, I think, Millionaire Next Door, one of the wealth books of the month, and he tagged us. So thank you, Pat. Thank you for being a member of the Weights and Wealth Book Club. And speaking of the Weights and Wealth Book Club, Nick and I have the June books of the month as well, even though we are halfway through July here. As I mentioned, we forgot to do the raffle in the book club in the beginning of July.
So this month's wealth book is The Go-Giver, which is really all about providing value. And it's kind of antithetical to a go-getter, which I feel like a go-getter kind of implies taking a little bit, whereas a go-giver is giving value. And in a perfect system, a go-giver will do much better than a go-getter because over time, people will realize that this person is taking rather than giving. And I say in a perfect system because that kind of implies the unabridged transfer of or being able to communicate your value very well. And we have things like advertising and sales, and they're very large industries, and people in those positions make a lot because they can kind of paint a picture of what a product does, even though it might not be completely accurate. But if you're somebody that is just constantly providing value, that's the kind of stuff that will spread through word of mouth and can get around very quickly. And over time, you will have the perception, which would be true, that you provide a lot of value.
And I think this might be the shortest book in the book club so far. So if you're looking to ease your way into reading and getting into the Weights and Wealth Book Club, Go-Giver. It's a great book, and it's pretty short, so might be a good one to start with. The Weights book of the month is The Eagle and the Dragon by Chris Duffin. If you're into lifting, you may know who Chris Duffin is. He's the founder of Kabuki. He was a competitive power lifter, and I chose this book. It's not as much about lifting. The entire thing is not about lifting. It's almost more of a book about character and transforming yourself. So if you struggle with having a victim mentality, this book is definitely for you. It's probably one of my favorite books I've ever read. Definitely a 10 out of 10, but Chris has an incredible story. And if you're looking for a book about character, changing your circumstances, and just getting over obstacles and tough points in your life, I'm not sure there's a better book than The Eagle and the Dragon. Should we get into the topic here, or do we have an intro article first, Nick?
We do. It's how vegetable oils came to replace animal fats in the typical American diet. I think when did vegetable oils really start to be introduced? Was it like the 60s, 70s?
Yeah, so early 1900s is when they started using them more, but after Big Sugar attacked saturated fat as one of the culprits, the article goes through how Big Sugar, Big Cereal made saturated fats almost illegal according to the food pyramid to consume. So it goes through how vegetable oils wound up replacing that saturated fat. But of course, animal fats do have a lot of value in your diet, and there are nutritious qualities to animal fats that you don't necessarily get with vegetable oils.
Yeah, I mean, I know McDonald's used to be cooked in animal fat, and then they switched to vegetable oils, which is largely what makes McDonald's so unhealthy.
Yeah, a lot of people used to use tallow for everything, and now they use vegetable oil because it is cheaper and because people thought you can't use animal fat or you'll die.
Yeah, and I think the animal fat thing is kind of starting to become known again, and I've seen a lot of people on Instagram promoting tallow products. Shout out Van Man, who is a potential future guest on Weights and Wealth. Guys like him have been promoting, I guess, the old-fashioned way of cooking and living, and which, in our opinion, is a lot healthier for you.
Yeah, we've gone over before the difference in the inflammatory properties between omega-3 and omega-6 and how these vegetable oils are really high in the omega-6 fatty acids, which can help create a pro-inflammatory state for your body. So, but if you want an article on how vegetable oils came to replace animal fats in the American diet, we'll have it linked in the show notes. And that article is from The Atlantic.
Okay, should we get into today's topic?
Let's go for it.
So this is basically how we think is the best way to use a smartphone, and we'll point out the positives and negatives for the impact on each of our Fs. And something that my dad always said growing up is to use a phone as a tool and not a toy. And I thought that was really dumb at the time because I loved Clash of Clans, and I still played it a little bit in college, but
A little?
a little. But by now, most of my time spent on my phone is using it for productive activities. And I'm almost entirely there. I do still scroll through Instagram reels now and then, but I mean, like, no more than like 15 minutes a day.
Yeah. And Nick is someone that was very hard to reach by phone for many years. Our friend group was always joking about how do we need to check if Nick's alive because no one's heard from him in 5 days.
Yeah, I haven't always been the best about responding timely to things, but I think I've gotten better with that.
Yeah, now that he has a girlfriend, he's on his phone a lot more, and it's much easier to get a response. All right. The first, so we'll just go through some positive attributes that you can use your phone for each 5F, and then also some of the negative ways that your smartphone might be affecting that F for each of the 5Fs as far as how you use it. So the first one we'll cover is faith. Again, our 5Fs, if you are new to the show here, our 5Fs are faith, fitness, finances, family, and freedom. So starting with faith, Nick, do you want to cover some of the positives?
Sure, yeah. So as far as faith goes, there are a lot of like Bible apps out there. You can read the Bible on your phone. You can have an app that sends you a daily Bible verse, just something for you to reflect on before you start your day. There are a lot of podcasts out there too. There's Bible in a Year, which I've started to listen to. I've gotten just about all the way through Genesis, and good YouTube videos as well.
Yeah, a lot of people will bring their phones to Bible study, or in church, they'll pull their phone out and follow along. I always like to have my physical Bible just because I'm more of a pen and paper kind of person, and I like to highlight and take notes in there. So I think if you can have the real thing physically in front of you, I do think that there's value in that because you're not going to get distracted and swipe into another app. You know, you're much more likely to, if you have your Bible and you sit down with it, you're much more likely to stay in the Word for 15, 20 minutes. Whereas if you have your phone, you might get a notification while you're in the Bible app and then not be reading the Bible.
Yeah. And we've also talked a lot about setting like systems in place to prevent yourself from doing stuff that you know that you shouldn't be doing. And if you swipe down from the top right corner on your phone, there's this little moon that you can click. Do not disturb. You won't get any notifications, which is great if you want to go into like a period of focus on something. Mm-hmm. So I've started using that a lot.
That's good.
And it's been very, very beneficial.
Now, I think for faith, there's a lot more negatives than positives for smartphone usage. Obviously, you got like the Bible app and some other ways that you can access material, whether it's YouTube or podcasts. But I think there's a lot of negative aspects of smartphone use for your faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first one is just social media. You see a lot of just bad influences that are counter to traditional morals on social media, and they kind of glamorize it as well. Mm-hmm. And that can be very appealing to people. They do talk about it in the Bible, like riches and stuff like that are very appealing. Mm-hmm. And that kind of captures people's attention. Another thing is porn, and Ted and I have talked about this on the podcast before. We haven't really gone too in depth, but more and more research has been coming out about how it affects people mentally, and it is not good. One of the largest things I've read is it makes you disinterested in an actual relationship with a real person. And about 67% of porn is watched on smartphones. And I think that's because you can easily hide it on a smartphone. Mm-hmm. Your smartphone is yours. A lot of people will share computers with other people. And I think most people deep down know it's wrong, but it's a good way to hide it.
Yeah. So. I don't really think there's that many people out there that don't feel guilty when they watch it. I feel like most people know that it's wrong, but your phone makes it more accessible. So that's definitely a negative aspect for faith in terms of smartphone usage. I think another thing, if we don't look at specifically what you're using your phone for, but just using a smartphone in general, have you ever not had your phone for a few days? I know you have, Nick, because you've lost your phone in Ubers several times.
Yes, I've gone.
All right. So typically when you go without your smartphone for a few days, I feel like you have a lot more time to think and reflect. Would you agree with that?
I would, yeah, because you aren't constantly berated by these notifications that take your attention away from whatever you were doing, or in that case, reflecting on something.
Yeah, I feel like smartphones are super distracting. Even if you're not using it at the moment, you might be thinking about, I should get back to this person, or I need to text this person, et cetera, et cetera. So for the time that you want to spend in prayer, you should not have your phone on you at those points, I think. We've talked in my Bible study that I go to before about how if you set aside 15 minutes in the morning to do your prayer, whatever you do every day for your prayer, how just having a smartphone around really impedes on that and affects your ability to think or to pray and communicate with God.
Yeah, and a lot of the notifications on your smartphone, they're not pressing, they're not urgent. If somebody needs you, they will call you. Don't you always have your call volume on, but your text, you don't even get a notification? Is that what you do?
I'm a big caller. I have pretty much every notification on my phone turned off. So even in the way I have my phone set up, I don't get the little badge for how many notifications I have. So my texts, I don't see how many texts I have unless I go into the text app. So it's not I have 20 texts I need to go respond to these people. It's let me go into my text app and text this person, and then when I do that, there will be text waiting for me.
And yeah, it's, if somebody's texting you, that's not something that's urgent. That's not something you have to respond right away to, especially if it's at night. If somebody's texting you at 8, 9 p.m. at night, know that you don't have to respond to them that night. It's not something that's urgently needs your attention and taking you away from doing something else. I know there's the whole phone at the dinner table thing, and I think that's huge because phones, they do pull you away from what's going on right in front of you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people just don't have any time to really think, because whenever they have a spare minute, they're always on their phone. Like it's just easy to just, pull out your phone and go on it. And there's so many options of things you can do. But if you do have time where you're not doing anything, maybe take a few minutes to think. I feel like people don't think anymore.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us into our family kind of the negatives that a smartphone has on your relationships with other people. You know, I see it all the time now, and I feel like I'm a 50-year-old guy saying this, but like teenagers on their phones sitting around at a restaurant together, they're all just texting and not talking with each other. Yeah. Like talking is a much better form of communication than texting is, because, communication is largely nonverbal. It's your inflection, which is somewhat verbal, but also your physical demeanor. Yeah. And like how you say something, not just the words that you say.
And things can be so misinterpreted when you text.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a hard and fast rule now. Never try to deal with conflict over text or email or anything like that, because when you try to read into something like that, you can easily misconstrue what somebody is trying to say, because how you say something, in my opinion, is more important than what you're actually saying.
Yeah, I agree. Along with the family, for positives, a lot of people will say that, it's easier to be connected and stay in touch with your friends and family through like FaceTime and smartphones and all these amazing tools that we have. And I think that's true to an extent, but people are also lonelier than ever. And I think that because people have FaceTime and these other tools with smartphones, they don't make it a point to see each other as much. Okay. Because they feel like they're seeing people. But you're missing out on a lot of the value of actually being around people when you're not with them. Like there's still a big difference between FaceTime and being with someone. Oh yeah. So I feel like people are like, I FaceTime my family like once a week. Maybe I don't need to see them every 2 weeks, and then they don't see their family as much and they lose that relationship, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for long distance things, like if you live far away from your family, as long as it isn't replacing you actually going to ever visit them. I do like having FaceTime to be able to stay in touch with people when I'm not close with them, or even just like on the phone. Like I know like one of our friends from college, Cooper, he and I talk probably like once a month or so. And it's good just to catch up, to stay connected, but that doesn't stop us from ever going to visit each other. Yeah. I mean, like he's coming here for your wedding, so I'll see him then. And yeah.
Screenagers. This is something we say in my family for the teenagers that you mentioned that are always on their phones. And in the Army, like there's a lot of waiting around. And now all these privates and specialists are just always on TikTok and on their phones when they're just waiting around. And I've always got my backpack with me, which people make fun of me for walking around with my backpack all the time, but I've always got 5 or 6 books in there. And every time I walk past a group of soldiers that are all just on their phones instead of hanging out and talking, I always offer everyone a book. I usually get met with some slurs and swear words and
I mean, yeah. And then, on the screenagers, we say this like the same exact thing in our family. And now if I touch my phone, all my sisters will yell screen alt.
Yeah. It is a double-edged sword, because like Alex sent me a dog video the other day on Instagram when I was at work, and I opened it up and one of my soldiers came by and he was like, he's watching reels. Because you become that person where like if they see you doing it, you're immediately a hypocrite. So.
Oh yeah, because if I ever see them on their phone, I just say screenager, and they usually do put their phone away though when I say it.
All right, third F. Let's move on to freedom. Some of the positives of having a smartphone on freedom is that it's able to connect you with forums of other like-minded people. This can be a good thing and a bad thing.
It's a double-edged sword for sure. It's how bad ideas can kind of run rampant, but it's also how good ideas can take root.
Yeah. Like, unfortunately, the flat earth theory is much more popular today than it was like 20 years ago, just because the internet
Yeah, and I think kind of the reason why these ludicrous ideas can kind of take hold is because of the privacy element. Like nobody is going to know what you're actually saying, and I guess that can kind of get into cancel culture a little bit because when people do know what you're saying, they can cancel you. But I mean, I think there's a happy medium between the two. And now forums like Reddit and Twitter and Instagram have kind of replaced the public square, which I know you have talked a lot about. And what's talked a lot about in law is, can these companies censor what people say? Because it's more of a way of people to express their thoughts. And there isn't really as much of another option anymore because people don't congregate in a public square.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of value in finding these like communities of other people online. Like for smartphones, the coaching group that I'm in, Prescript Collective, any coaches or trainers out there, highly recommend the Prescript Collective. But like the other Prescript coaches and I are all in this huge Discord together and we help each other solve problems. So that's like a really great tool for any personal trainer or chiro or physical therapist, etc., nutrition coach to use, to have all these other coaches and like this hive network of people that you can get solutions from when you have a question about a client if you haven't worked through a specific scenario before. And add to that like all the other different ways that we access education through smartphones. It's pretty incredible, and it's definitely a valuable tool. I think where people go wrong is they say that their smartphone is a tool that they can use for things like education, but then they just use it for other things like watching YouTube videos for hours.
And yeah, I mean, I'm sure most people know there's screen time on your phone, but it also breaks it down by category.
Yeah.
So you can really go in and see where you're spending all of your time. And then also I want to touch on the medium of communication is very, very important, and selecting the right medium. And I kind of want to do a podcast entirely on this because I think using the right medium to communicate your thought is vital to communicating it accurately. Like when you're on Discord, I'm sure you're not getting in-depth ideas or thoughts or something like that. It's like one-off questions.
You'd be surprised. People post like paragraphs in response to other people.
And I am on a couple of Discords and I've seen stuff like that, but I think that's where a misinterpretation is likely to happen. Like that would be much easier to do over an explanation if it's a very in-depth question and you're not experienced. And there's that whole thing like, oh, this meeting could have been an email. Yeah. And I think in some situations, yes, but I think talking things out can usually get to the bottom of an issue a lot quicker than an email can.
Yeah. And with the Prescript Collective, they do have different mediums that we solve problems through, because there's like the Discord is one aspect of it where you can get helpful thoughts or answers to questions you have. But then people will also post videos in the Discord. And then we have a lab where we all meet on Zoom and we go through and we'll spend like an hour breaking down 3 or 4 different videos. So it's a much longer form breakdown of an issue.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems with social media is that it's usually short form. Like the sound bites have just been getting shorter and shorter and shorter. But we have talked about how podcasts are exploding in popularity, which I think is very good because it allows people to fully explain their ideas. And plus then you can also hear inflection. And then now with video, like Spotify having video, YouTube, you can see their facial expressions, and all of that kind of goes into communicating something. And then also, I mean, just think about how many different forms of communication that's on a phone. So, well, outside of the phone, you could talk in person, but then you got FaceTime, Snapchat, Discord, Reddit, Instagram, Twitter, I'm sure I'm missing some. Just regular texting. Like all these things have their place, but it's just important to choose the appropriate medium to discuss a topic. And that takes a lot of discretion, which is hard to figure out. But
it's an interesting one, though, because you definitely gain a lot of freedom in how you're able to communicate with so many more people. But you also lose a lot of freedom because like big tech will censor you, and the NSA has access to, like, all these different 3-letter agencies have access to everything you say pretty much. So you gain and lose freedom by using a smartphone, I think, when it comes to communicating.
Yeah, and I guess in one sense it is private, but in one sense it's also less private because everything can be tracked to an IP address. All right, should we move on to fitness?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so some of the positives. The biggest one is that you can listen to Weights and Wealth to improve your fitness knowledge.
Is that also the biggest positive for finance?
It is, yeah. You want to go with some?
Yeah, sure. Another huge positive for smartphones is the macro tracking apps. Being able to count calories and macros on an app by scanning a barcode is so much easier than what they had to do back in the day. I've only ever counted macros and calories on a smartphone using an app where you can scan a barcode. I can't imagine back in the day, 20 years ago, when these bodybuilders and gym rats were going through a notebook, writing everything down, looking at a table that had different foods in it, and trying to figure out how much calories and protein and carbs and fats were in each food. Like, just seems like a whole lot of work, but it's very easy now. And we know that tracking calories and macros is a pretty effective way for people to gain muscle and burn fat and change their body composition. So the fact that you can do that all on your smartphone with the click of a button is pretty great for your fitness aspect. Another one is being able to find and evaluate coaches, because if you show up to a gym, there are a lot of bad personal trainers out there. There's a lot of people that just enjoy the gym and they get a certification in a weekend and then they're a personal trainer. And it's unfortunate because they kind of bring down the rest of the industry of people who are actually professional strength and conditioning and nutrition coaches. So when you have a smartphone, you can see most coaches have a social media for their business, and you can see at least how they present themselves and what kind of information they bring to the table and what kind of things they do with their clients on a daily basis. Even though you might just be seeing like a highlight reel, at least you have some kind of a tool to evaluate a coach or a trainer.
Mm-hmm. And I know we've been over like the tools, I forget which episode, but we can link about how to evaluate a personal trainer, because even just knowing that, like, because a personal trainer who might look great and get their clients great results, that could all be a front for social media. And you want to see the people who are like in the Go Giver, the ones that are providing real value by giving you free content like you do on Ted's Lift Help, which is another great positive for the fitness industry, is that you can look up form videos while doing an exercise in the gym. Yeah,
that was a big part for me when I started to get into lifting, of learning how to do different exercises, was going through Instagram. Like, one of the first guys that was really helpful to me was Jorge Rosada. I think it's fitness_IQ. But back when I was starting lifting, maybe like 8 or 9 years ago, I can't believe it was that long ago, but he was posting videos on how to do things, how not to do things form-wise for different exercises, and it was very helpful to me as someone that was getting started. The downside is sometimes you might have people posting videos that are incorrect and you get bad information, but
yeah. And then the negatives are mostly just like the flip side of what we talked about. Like, as much good information there is out there, there's also a lot of bad information where people are kind of doing social media just to build some clout. And I don't know if this is right or wrong, but watching, like you can tell the people that are in the gym filming themselves so that they can post it on social media to try to look good. And it gets under my skin a little bit. Like you can tell the people that are taking a video to look at their own form and stuff like that. And then there's not that.
Yeah. Also, I feel like there's a lot of people that use their smartphone at the gym, but it impedes their fitness because they'll be on their phone for like 4 minutes in between sets and they're not really working that hard. they might work hard during their set, but they're not very present during their workout. They're not very connected, and they're not sticking to their rest interval they're supposed to stick to. And rest intervals are a factor that you can manipulate in programming. So when you kind of throw that out the window by just being on your phone for however long it takes for you to get bored on Instagram, you might be doing yourself a big disservice during that workout. And if that happens every workout, you might not be progressing as fast as you would if you were sticking on more of like a 2-minute timer for in between your sets.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious what your opinion on this is, but like the music, everybody is listening to, or almost everybody listens to music at the gym. And I do see some value in going to the gym and not listening to music because you're more likely to talk to people in the gym and you can learn something from someone else, or just build a relationship with somebody who has similar goals as you. And then also when I am listening to music in the gym, it's usually very hyped up music. And I almost feel like I'm getting to the point where I rely on that kind of music to hit big, heavy sets. Like I almost need that sort of external stimuli to get my body to exert a lot of force. And I don't want to have to rely on something like that. I want to be able to muster up that force just by myself.
Yeah, it's interesting because they've actually done studies. I've done a TED Lift Help post on this before, but there's actually studies that will show that listening to music that you like, that gets you like hyped up, increases your performance. But like you're saying, we actually had this conversation in the Prescript Collective, shout out again, but we actually had this conversation about listening to more like calming or peaceful music while you lift and being more focused on like connecting, and then being more focused during those heavy lifts on like
mind
the
muscle
form.
connection.
Yeah, on mind muscle connection and on form, and like being focused instead of angry for those top sets, and learning how to lift being focused instead of angry. Because there definitely is a big difference in that. And sometimes lifting like angry and getting yourself all hyped up makes you miss a lift because you're not focusing on bracing and getting your spine stacked and everything that you do in your pre-execution checklist.
Yeah, and I know Huberman talked about it in his dopamine podcast too. Like listening to music that you like will raise your dopamine. A lot of people drink a lot of caffeine right before working out. That'll raise it, and lifting raises your dopamine as well. So you're kind of getting flooded with a bunch of dopamine, and as we know, that kind of like when it does come back down to baseline, you're going to need even more next time to get that same intense good feeling you should naturally get from the gym.
Is that why every week when I'm working out, I get the notification that my headphones are too loud?
Yes.
And I've exceeded the volume for the last 7 days. I'm glad you know the notification I'm talking about.
Oh, I get it every week. I do. All right. Shall we move on to finance?
Yeah.
How the smartphone affects it?
Yep.
So one of the best ways is just it can keep you very organized. You know, you have your budgeting apps. You can access your bank through your phone. You can track your net worth through your phone. You can basically just track everything very easily and very well. And that's pretty much it for the finance end, I think.
Yeah, I mean, being able to see your credit card statement in real time is very helpful if you're not writing everything down, you know? So I feel like it definitely saves people a ton of time for budgeting, being able to go through those banking apps and your credit card apps. That's like revolutionary, I think, for people's personal finance.
Yeah, it just provides you real-time data a lot faster than we really ever had before. Because, I mean, I'm sure even before online banking, like you would have to wait every month to get your bank statement to see.
That seems so crazy.
It does, yeah.
Never having had that, obviously. I mean, actually, I do remember growing up when we had our debit cards, my mom would print off our statements for us every month, and we'd have to go through and like highlight everything. But yeah, in recent memory, like you and I pretty much have always had online banking since we've been really spending money. So it is very helpful to be able to see how much room you have left.
Yeah. Yeah, but the other side of it is that it also makes spending money a whole lot easier.
That's
and
true.
Transferring money between accounts when you really shouldn't, selling stocks when you shouldn't. I mean, on Robinhood, you can just swipe up and sell a stock. Whereas before, you had to go to your broker or something like that to sell your stocks. And I think online shopping is probably the biggest thing. Like one-click purchasing has become huge, where you just have to click a button and then you've spent $50 for something to come to your door in a couple of days.
Yeah, Amazon having the Amazon app on your phone is revolutionary. Like it's crazy because I mean we were doing this yesterday. We were filming a podcast, or a couple days ago. We were filming and we needed a book for like research for one of the topics. And within literally 20 seconds, I'd bought the book and it was going to be at the house the next day. It was that quick to hit the Amazon app, type in half the book title, click buy now, and it's literally one click in the shopping cart. It's already got all my stuff saved. And 20 seconds later, we had spent $17 on a book. So.
Yeah, like there are far few barriers. And Ted and I got lunch yesterday and we got it through Uber Eats. I just had to open the app, click the store, click the thing we wanted, and then that was it.
That was some good barbecue.
It was very good barbecue.
Shout out Rodney Scott's here in Charleston.
Very good barbecue.
Before that, how many eggs did you make us for breakfast yesterday morning? It was a huge
we made
bowl.
14 because you wanted 8 and I like having 6. So
it's a big pan.
A whole thing of bacon too.
All right, is that all you've got for finance?
Yep, I think that about wraps it up.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with friends. If you think we missed something on a positive or negative impact on the 5Fs, let us know. We love to keep the discussion going in the comments on the reels that we post from the excerpts from these podcasts. So make sure to comment or DM us.
Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.